And then you can, post the link on Facebook because that gives us the recording. And here it is. And
Now
then you can, post the link on Facebook because here we go. Found it? So let me know, Chris, if
you are live on YouTube, yes.
All right, cool. Then let's get this party started. So we are celebrating International Jazz Day, woohoo, April 30th. And we are celebrating it with the release of something really cool. So this is, I have to mention, sponsored by B-Town Jazz, and especially sponsored by the Smithville Charitable Foundation, who supported us with the finances. And it's our Indiana Jazz Masters in the School program that we were able to pivot from, well, not completely, but to some degree, a program where we go into schools and we interact with the kids and share about this really, really special heritage that we have here in Indiana. And actually, anywhere you are, you have a really special heritage. You know, every locality has a pool of legacy musicians that come from that space that need to be honored and are connected to that space. And we have, from Bloomington, where Hoagy Carmichael grew up, hung out with Big Spider Beck, then went to the Jeanette Studios and and recorded. And some of the very first jazz recordings are right from Indiana, from the Jeanette Studios. Louis Armstrong would drive down with King Oliver from Chicago. And then, of course, our legacy from Indiana Avenue, where between the 30s, 40s, 50s, some of the biggest, most important jazz musicians of that era grew up in a few blocks apart together, which is everybody from Wes Montgomery and Freddie Hubbard and Slide Hampton and J.J. Johnson and David Baker and Larry Ridley and so many more. So we usually brought this program to the schools and we would interact and tell the stories and have everybody get excited about improvising. And when COVID hit, we couldn't go to the schools because everything was closed down. So we decided to videotape the segments of the show and put it together as a resource. And part of that resource, which I actually think is a wonderful thing that is here to stay, are also lesson plans and history. And it is going live today on the B-Town Jazz website. So I'm going to share the site the way it looks like here for a minute. I share my screen and it is right here. So you can also see the link, btownjazz.org, and you can see the site. If you go and learn, it has the mural on top from those legacy artists, Wes Montgomery, Freddie Hubbard, J.J. Johnson, David Baker, Slide Hampton back there, David Young, and more. There's Larry Ridley back there. And here's some pictures of us being in Maggie's classroom, doing it live. So hopefully, something I also want to point out, it doesn't mean we will never do this live again. We will do this live as soon as we can and as often as we can. We just offer this for all the places where we can't get to, so we can actually have more of it. And anybody who would also like to sponsor one of those shows, there's also some information on that page. But it's divided in 4 units. So we have Unit 1, which is Hoagie Carmichael, Big Spiderbeck, and the Jeanette Studios. And it features us going to the studios and recording Georgia together. And there are some lesson plans that go with it and resources. Then Unit 2 talks about Indiana Avenue and has an opportunity to learn the blues and to play along with the blues. And here's actually a picture of the Hampton family, one of the legacy families off Indiana Avenue. And then Unit 3 has the instruments in the jazz combo. So we introduce each player, and there's an opportunity to learn about the different instruments and experiment with it. And Unit 4, of course, the classic Back Home Again in Indiana, Back Home Again. And it's interesting because it's such a folky song, which actually became more popular than the actual state song of Indiana and was performed at the Indy 500 races for years, every year. But it also became a jazz classic. So often it became part of the jazz repertoire, and it became a vehicle for jazz musicians to improvise on, a very popular one, no matter where they are from. Often they're doing Back Home in Indiana and are not even sure where the whole thing comes from. But it's a great way to sing along, to learn the words, and then it gets jazzed up and you can parade around the classroom and have some fun with it. So those are the 4 units. And what I wanted to do is, of course, first introduce our amazing contributors for the lessons, and then take one of the units and we'll play the video, and then our master teachers can share some of their resources and suggestions on how this could be implemented in the classroom and some of how they could be used. And I'm hoping we'll also get some questions. So feel free to post in the YouTube link or wherever you can see us if you have questions about it or comments about it. Happy to respond and happy to see what we can help with. So our 2 master teachers that we're helping are Lisa Zorn and Maggie Olivo. Lisa is a longtime teacher. When I went to school and got my degree, she was my mentor in how to teach in the elementary classroom, and she showed us some techniques and has recently retired. Woohoo! But leaving such an incredible legacy in Bloomington of generations and generations of kids that got inspired. And Maggie is our young lion killer teacher. She started out as a composer and then found her calling in inspiring these kids. And also, so how about Lisa, I'll get you on real quick, and then Maggie, I want to have you talk about the blooming songs also that you're doing. So Lisa, hello.
Hello. Hello. This is great. I'm so excited for this. I'll come back to some of the lesson plans after the video, but I just wanted to say how much when you would come to the schools where I would teach, how the kids so looked forward to the live performance. And it allowed me as a music teacher, it was wonderful because I could lead up to it with some concepts, with some ideas, some blues, things like that. And then after, I could follow through with what you did. The fact that it can't be live for a while makes me sad, but these videos are so natural. They follow along, they are sequenced beautifully, but they're not scripted. It's as if it's live. And I think kids will appreciate that, as well as music teachers. So thank you for doing this. And it reaches out to some of those, maybe, we can get into northern Indiana and even further south, where you might not be able to get to them live. So what a wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Exactly. Thanks, Lisa. And Maggie, yeah, tell us a little bit about the other things you're doing too.
Oh, well, kind of like Lisa, Monica has had a big impact on me. And I think before my time working with her, jazz was not something that I really took a lot of pride in terms of being able to teach it. And I think Monica really helped me to focus on the integrity of the genre. Whereas I think, like many elementary general music teachers, we would always look at the chords. So if we saw a 1-7 or a 4-7 or a 5-7, we thought of them as like, okay, we're in C major, here's a C major, here's my 4 chord, here's my 5. And then Monica was really the one where I remember having that conversation with you and Kathy Heisey. And Monica was like, the third is so important. And so is that minor 7th. You can't leave out the minor 7th. And then also talking about the swing, and then the elements of improv. And then when I got to see it in action with the Jazz Masters, where that not only did they have that live performance, but they were having kids come in, like, a dozen kids go up to a xylophone and giving them mallets to improvise alongside the band. So I think, and then she had alluded to blooming songs, and lucky for me, Monica's very generous with her time. She's an amazing pedagogue herself, so it's really flattering to hear nice words coming from you. So thank you. But and so I had talked to her about having again, I mean, I don't know if you realize how much I was influenced by what you had done with the Jazz Masters. So looking at, okay, how can we let the rest of the Hoosier kids know that Indiana is a place of great music? And so she talked about the Blooming Songs Project, and Monica was one of the first people that I talked to where we commissioned and produced local music that we could use, give to families, give to music teachers so that they could use them in their classroom.
Oh, we need to get Maggie back. Now your sound went away. There you go.
I don't know why I got away, but anyway, there's one song that those of you with little ones, Monica and the Indiana Jazz Masters did a version called My Name is Jazz, which is quite popular. And so that's a great gateway. And I actually use it with the little ones with the Unit 2 right before they learn about Indiana Avenue. We learn about My Name is Jazz. We learn the different instruments, and then we'll segue into her video. So
we'll just keep singing each other's praises, because I just think you all are some of the best people there. Elementary music teachers are. I'm hoping people realize how important that job is. My mom was an elementary music teacher, and I watched quite a bit. And, meaning this is the time when the kids are in those formative years, right? Meaning whatever you can show to them, have them exposed to, experience, might be the thing that they latch onto. If any of you think back on when you got excited about doing what you do, if it's music, whatever it is, there's probably a moment you can trace it back to that was somewhere between 2nd and 7th grade or something in there, where you saw something, somebody came to the classroom, mom and dad took you to a concert to an event or whatever it is, where you can trace it back, where you had that moment where your jaws went down, you went, oh, that's what I want to do. I could put you guys on the spot and think about what was your moment. And so that's why it's so important, in those elementary years to just provide a palette of things, as many different things as possible, because if you don't see something or experience something, you were just taken away the opportunity to decide that this is something you like, that this is your calling, that this is a way you can express yourself, or whatever it is. And by the time we get to middle school and high school, it's too late. You've got it all made up, whatever your preferences are. But yeah, that's why we want to share this resource so it can be used and incorporated. So even if somebody's like, oh, I don't know anything about jazz, and this is like very foreign to me, and I don't know the language, it's okay, it's all there. So all right, so let's give an example of how this could work. And so I'm gonna share the screen, and I'm gonna play our C Jam Blues segment. So the C Jam Blues segment is taking us to Indiana Avenue in the 30s, 40s, where on Sunday afternoon, David Baker here, I'm going to hold David up for a minute. So I did this book on David Baker, and I got to experience him and his legacy. And he would always tell the story on Sunday afternoons. They would go over to the Hampton House where 13 kids and a family band would have jam sessions, and there's the Kool-Aid in the bucket and all that. And that's how you learned. It was like the mini university. So this segment takes you to a jam session. The kids can come along. And we're using the C Jam Blues, which is a Duke Ellington blues, whose birthday was yesterday. and it's the cool thing about it is it uses only 2 notes, G, G, and C. And so it can be used so the kids can learn to play it and do that. And then we recorded the video, so it invites everybody to respond to the chat, to the scatting that Janice Jaffe does. So I'll play it, and then we'll have each of you give us some ideas on how this could be further implemented, and what some of the resources are. So, all right, here is episode 2, the C Jam Blues.
Come on, let's go jam at Duke's place. 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 Come on, let's go Duke's place. My name is Monica Hersig. I'm a jazz musician, but I'm also an author. I wrote a book about a jazz musician, educator called David Baker, who grew up in Indianapolis. And we want to take you today on a journey to learn about jazz, but also about some incredible musicians right here from Indiana that changed the music, changed the world of jazz. And if you are in Indianapolis, here we'll show you a picture. This is on Capitol Road in Indianapolis, downtown, on the Musicians Repair Service side. And it's a mural of all these famous jazz musicians. So the people you see on this mural is, you see David Young on the saxophone, Jimmy Coe on the saxophone, David Baker, and J.J. Johnson and Slide Hampton on the trombones. There's Freddie Hubbard on there on the trumpet, and Larry Ridley. And the guy with the camera, that's Duncan Sheet. Duncan Sheet was a great photographer, and he actually created a book called The Jazz State of Indiana. And Duncan Sheet also was there when a lot of these musicians were discovered. He was always telling the story about the guitar player who was also on the mural, which is Wes Montgomery, and how he witnessed the night when he was discovered and signed to the biggest record label at the time, which was Riverside Records, and went on the road and put out some of the most important recordings of all time. So we would love to show you a little. So in a minute, we're gonna jam on a song called Sea Jam Blues. And we're joining on what's called a jam session in jazz, meaning musicians get together and they agree on a song to play, and then each one gets a turn to improvise and make things up. And the story about how they would gather on Sunday afternoons at a house called the Hampton House, because a family lived there with 13 kids who all played instruments, who were a traveling band, and ended up staying in Indianapolis. So we're going to go to the jam session with the Hampton family and do some Sea Jam Blues. Some of the members of the Hampton family are very well known in the jazz community. There's, of course, Slide Hampton, who you saw on the mural. There is Alitra Hampton, the piano player. There is Dawn Hampton, dancer and singer. There is Virtue Hampton, the bass player. There's Carmelita Hampton on the baritone sax. There is so many more of the family. So, you ready to do a jam session? And remember some of the things we talked about, because at the end of this, we'll have some quiz questions for you. But for now, we'll do. Come on, let's go jam at Duke's place. Come on, let's go jam at Duke's place. Come on, let's go jam at Duke's place. Yeah, come on, let's go jam at Duke's place. Come on, let's go jam at Duke's place. Come on, let's go jam at Duke's place.
Come on, you can jam at Duke's Place with us. Come on, you can jam. Just repeat after me. Come on. Ba-da-da-da. Ba-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da. Vo, vo, vo. Ba-da-da-da. Ba-ba-ba-ba. Boom, ba-da. Ba-da-da-da-da. Ba-da-da. Way for the way for. I won't, but wait at it. Whee! Bra, bra, bra. Ba, 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 do. Ba, do, do, do. Ba, do, do, do. Ba, 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 do. Oh, oh, oh. Hey, yeah. Let's go to Duke's Place. Come on, jam at Duke's Place. Come on, let's go jam at Duke's Place. Come on, let's go jam at Duke's Place. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, let's jam at Duke's Place. Come on, let's go jam at Duke's Place. Oh, come on, let's go jam at Duke's
So that's segment number 1. And I'm gonna stop sharing here. So now we're all excited. We just saw this cool segment, and you know, Janice was inviting us obviously to sing along, which you should all do, and I hope everybody did. And so now there's opportunities to get the kids even more excited. So who wants to get started? All right, Maggie, go.
Yeah, so, and also you'll notice that both Lisa and I tended to take the primary grades, and she took the intermediate. So I think we could start with the little ones chronologically. And so when we watch that video, I actually have a little bit of sharing that I can show of some stuff that our kids did. Hopefully I'll share the correct screen. But this is, we had just seen that, and they got to interact with Janice. They got to do the back and forth. And then I actually worked with their classroom teachers on sight words, different sounds, scat syllables. So this is like they're practicing when Janice was going doo-da-ba-doo-ba and all of that. So they're echoing right back to her. And then here's some just little solos of their scat that I was going to share with you. And so they could do this on top of DJam.
Scooby cat.
So you see, so it was a lot of fun. And so that is connected to the lesson that's called Scat Cat. And we actually do have a scat puppet, and I think you can cut it out. And so when we're doing that, and I will often play C Jam. Monica, actually Indiana Jazz Masters did a version that's in D, which I'm a string player, so that's a really happy, friendly string playing key, and we'll just go around, and then so the little cat will stop and then do, and we do start with echoes first, where I'll be like Scooby-Dooby-Doo-Wop, and then they echo, and I do a whole bunch of different patterns, but I also make sure to share Janice because she's a master scatter, whereas I mean I can make things up, but that's not really my thing. So and then give them that chance. And then I start letting them finish our scat sentences. And then once they've done that a whole bunch, I have them start making up their own sentences. So you saw a little glimpse of that. So that's what I have to say about that lesson.
And what resources did you add on the website that we can specifically?
So if you look here, I'm going to share my screen again. So this is specific to the Scat Cat one, and this is the lesson plan. So if you go to, I believe it's Unit 2, and if you go down, and the neat thing about this lesson is I did collaborate specifically with classroom teachers on this, so it ties directly into both our music standards and theirs. Their ELA specifically, because they're working on those sight words and those word blends, and so many of them are scat syllables, you know, ending with at and op. Those were the main ones. And if you see, you know, we have like the finger puppet, you can click here, and it's taking a little bit while, but I'll just go ahead and download it for you so you can go ahead and pick that out. And there you go. So you can just, you know, outline. What I did is I did it on cardstock and got like a popsicle stick, and Scat Cat just walks around. So that's how I do that. And then the whole lesson plan is there for you.
Cool. Let's all be scat cats. Who doesn't want to be a scat cat, right?
I know what I forgot too. Haran Kim is the artist. I did not do the cat. So she's a beautiful artist, and she had done the cat, and then I got permission to put the sunglass clip art on it.
Takes a village, but yeah, that's cool. And you know, the involvement of doing the back and forth. I mean, usually in the schools, that's like the high part of the whole show, when they all get to come up and interact with Janice, and we have these long lines of kids waiting for their turn. You know, if you wait till middle school, they're all going, I'm not gonna come up there and do that. So Lisa, show us some of your resources that you added.
Let's see if I can get to it up here. I don't know. I saved them up here. If not, I'll just, let me see if it'll share screen here. Share my screen. Well, I took a little bit different tact. I don't see it here. It's up here on my, I went ahead and there we go. I went and looked at the Indiana Quarter and concentrated on that. And then after the third video unit, where you introduce the instruments, we do a scat type of exercise. But on this one, because I was so thrilled with the learning even myself more and more about Indianapolis and those incredible jazz musicians, I tried to give a little bit more exposure and to all of the, as a lot of the jazz musicians that are on this wonderful mural. Not all of them, but most of them. And the way I tried to work this PowerPoint and lesson is that you can use as much of it as a classroom teacher, music teacher as you want, or as little. And I tried to give some kind of interactive thing for the children to do for every single musician that is presented here. For instance, Jimmy Coe on this one, if you just hover above, it would get you to a Jimmy Coe piece. And then I suggest gently keeping the beat to it. And then if you go on to the next one, I'm not going to go through each one, but just to give you an idea, Larry Ridley, there's a little video here, and you hear his trio, and he gives this wonderful lecture. It's not even a lecture, it's just enhancing talk. And so down at the bottom here, I tried to incorporate something the kids could do, because all of a sudden, he talks about individual instruments and the importance of the bass with jazz. Oh, it's so fabulous. And the importance of the drum. And of course, the piano that does all, but then all of a sudden they play unison on this wonderful rhythm. So something to keep the kids going and watching. So as you go through, let me go quickly. Here we talk about melodic contour with trombonist J.J. Johnson. And they listen to a piece. Again, if you hover above time after time, it would get you to that. And then they kind of trace the melodic contour. And then on the next one, I thought, let's connect it with wonderful Freddie Hubbard. And there is, we do supply in the lesson plan. You could try to follow the contour of Freddie Hubbard's music, which is really hard to do, but that's part of the challenge. They could write it down, and I supplied a sheet that allows for that, or they could just do it in the air. So as you go through, I'm going through, and of course we talk about Crispus Attucks High School. There's some more information here. Part of the thing we wanted to do, and I think we tried to do it because of Maggie's influence and as well as Monica's, is try to also address social justice and social emotional learning. And so we tried in almost all of our lessons to address this, and what better place than the Indiana Corridor and what happened and why through segregation we had these incredible musicians and then it dropped, and what happened to this wonderful situation. And it's throughout this PowerPoint that we talk about it. So I'm just going to go through a little more and then be done. Here I offer, if you wanted, there's a diagram where you could do a Venn diagram. You could go ahead and compare and contrast Slide Hampton and West Montgomery, and you can do it as a class together, or within the lesson plan, there is the opportunity to just print it off if you wanted kiddos to do it individually. It depends on what grade level. Maybe fifth and sixth graders could do this. Fourth graders, it might be better to do it as a class or don't do it at all. So that's just where I wanted to go. And then finally, just it goes on. There's more to it, but I hope that it addresses the wonderfulness of the Indiana Corridor and what the Indiana Jazz Masters try to get to in their video, as well as social justice and social emotional learning. And then when we get to our next video, which is introducing the instruments, then we go and we actually jam and do scat singing, and we talk about what scat singing is and give some Ella Fitzgerald and wonderful examples of that. So I am done. I took too much time and I apologize for that. So let me get you out of this. And
Well, actually, I'm the one sharing, following along.
okay. So you get me out of here, and thank you.
Well, you're fine, and thank you. So Lisa's resources, as you can see, there's lesson plans, and then there's the PowerPoint presentations, and then this is I think from Maggie. My name is Jazz. That's the composition. They are quite elaborate and ready to use. All you have to do is go on the website and click on it, and you have it, and it's there. So I'm hoping this can also be shared far and wide. I'm curious. I don't know if we had any comments or questions from anywhere yet, because I don't see the YouTube where I can have a look at it and see. Oh yeah, I can see it. Thank you. Janice is there. She is commenting on it, and B-Town Jazz, and Michael, hello to Richmond, Virginia. It's so good to hear from you. Yay. So if there's any questions on the materials, then please do share. Otherwise, we can dive into one more of the other units. It looks like that might be what we shall do. Anybody has any preferences? Well, you know, I would say we would take it on back home again in Indiana, but I'm open if
Sure.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
So, okay. And then I was supposed to get the sound from inside so we can hear it better. But I'm not sure on that right now, so you'll just hear it to my speakers. All right, back home again in Indiana is the last segment, and it's not the state song, but it is the popular song overall, and this one gets you to learn the words, learn to sing along, and also realize what this means, jazzing things up, meaning you don't just take a song and you go in nowhere land, but you give it a beat that you could walk through, talk through, and I'll share it, and maybe we can share a few more ideas then on how to teach that once we look through.
Do you recognize the song that's playing? You should, because it's a very special song about Indiana. It's called Back Home Again in Indiana, and it's probably the best known song about this state. This is a very, very special state. There's so many different landscapes, so many different areas, and as we learned in previous sessions about jazz, an immense history of creating jazz music and amazing jazz musicians. So for our last segment, you actually get to sing along with us and possibly dance along with us and see how we jazz up a very special song. This is Back Home Again in Indiana, and it talks about the candlelight, the moon, it talks about the Wabash River, it talks about the sycamores and the hay. Back Home Again in Indiana is not the state song. That's actually on the banks of the Wabash. But it's probably more popular than the state song because it has been performed before the Indy 500 every year since 1946. Get ready. The words will be on the screen. Sing along with us as loud as you can. And then we'll jazz it up. We'll make it swing. We'll make you want to dance along. And if your teachers allow, get up, form a parade, and do one around the room, and then sing it out with us. Have fun. This note, we're going to sing Back Home Again in Indiana. Back home again in Indiana, and it seems that I can see the gleaming candlelight still shining bright o'er the sycamore for me. The new mown hay sends all its fragrance o'er the fields I used to roam. When I dream about the moonlight on the
so much for singing with us, for listening today, and for learning about jazz and the special Indiana jazz legacy. So I just have a few quiz questions for you, and I'm sure your teacher will have a great reward for those of you who can answer. All right, you ready to play? Question number 1. Can you name some of the famous jazz musicians from that picture? And those of you who can give at least 2 are going to get a prize.
Put it in the YouTube chat. We'll give a prize out. Name 2.
And I have another question. Do you remember what that family was called that had 13 kids? What was the name of that family?
Put it in the YouTube chat. There's a prize on
Cool,
it.
the Hampton family, right? And one last one. Anybody remembers what it's called when you get together, when jazz musicians get together and just for fun play some music?
You.
That's right, it's a jam session. So have fun, have lots of jam sessions. Thanks for listening, and go learn the piano. Okay, here's your chance to sing along with us. Back Home Again in Indiana, that we already learned. Then we're going to improvise. We're going to hear from Tom on the saxophone, Monica on the piano. This is Chris and Peter. Now's your chance. You're also going to get a chance to dance. Here we go. Back home again in Indiana, and it seems that I can see a gleaming candlelight still shining bright o'er the sycamore for me. The new mown hay sends all its fragrance o'er the fields I used to roam. When I dream about the moonlight on the Wabash, then I long for my Indiana home.
Then I long for my Indiana, long for my Indiana, long for my Indiana home. Nice. That was great.
Yay! So I hope everybody was singing and parading along. And so we actually do have a question, yay, that Melody, that you two could probably speak to. So somebody asked if we can talk a little bit more about using these resources for a teacher that doesn't have the jazz experience, what preparation you would recommend before doing the lessons, if at all. So maybe you'll have some tips here for the ones that are a little wary of jazz.
I have just a couple of things that have really helped me. I think always utilizing the source. So if I'm going to share about jazz, I'm not going to try to be the example that I share. And then I also think that Monica and I think some of her colleagues have kind of said the three main things to always look for is the swing, the incorporating improvisation, and then the sevenths. So that's always helped me quite a bit. And again, like I think these resources, these videos, they're especially helpful to people in our situation because we can press play and then with these lesson plans either to prepare them before they watch the video or to reflect afterwards, it's really helpful. So that's what's helped me. Lisa has more experience in jazz than me, but I'll let Lisa take it.
Yeah, no, not necessarily, but I think that's what's so lovely about these videos is they lend themselves to anyone being able to teach jazz and expose the children, like Monica said earlier, give that child that may have never heard jazz before the opportunity to hear it, and all of a sudden it's like that's their love. It can happen, and those are the kids we want to get to. So I agree. I think it does help to peruse the lesson plans and the video beforehand, so you know maybe what you want to emphasize as a classroom teacher or how you want to put them in your order. They could go probably in any order it doesn't have to be, right? So just so what you're comfortable with, so that would be helpful as a classroom teacher, as a music teacher. I keep bringing up classroom too, because sometimes, not that I like that, I always want a music teacher to teach music, but it can't always be the case. I think these are user-friendly to classroom teachers where some school might not have a music teacher, and wow, wouldn't it be great to be able to show this, and you don't have to know jazz to be able to benefit from the way the Indiana Jazz Masters put it together. So,
I absolutely agree on that, and that's the purpose of it. So it's supposed to be something where you don't need to know about jazz, that you can use and put in the classroom. And I also agree on that. It's so good to for classroom teachers to be able to do it. You know, as you know, I used to teach the classes for the elementary ed majors, the one music class they had to take in college where we learned the recorder and all these things just to have something. And I remember how scared they were, of this music thing that they weren't comfortable with, because it, you know, they might not have had any training before or anything, and so they got stuck in this music class, and I was talking to them about major chords and things, and so they were like, you know, we don't want this. But you know, my mom was a classroom teacher, and she always taught those recorders to her kids. She was not a music teacher, but she did the recorder, and she always sang songs with them and integrated. And I thought, you know, it was so important. So yes, all this material is supposed to be for everyone, and not even classrooms, if it's homeschools, whatever, anywhere there are some kids that could benefit or would have fun, and the adults too, they need to know about this jazz legacy of Indiana also. So I'm really hoping that it can be used as far and wide as possible, and please share away and tell everybody, hey, there's something, it's free, it's there, use it. So any parting words from our master teachers of encouragement on this before we say the big thank you?
Just go for it, but go ahead, Maggie.
Okay. Well, I would say when you watch these videos, especially those of us who aren't totally familiar with jazz, be the student with your students, because I will say that when I'm watching and Janice is scatting and they're echoing, that helps give me syllables. So then I know when I'm not with the video and it's just me, I can put on that CJAM instrumental track and we can be scatting and they can imitate me and I can imitate them. And it's a very authentic way to kind of improvise and play around with that idiom. But we started from the source and from the Indiana Jazz Masters.
Yes, it's great. And if I may ask, I don't know if this is, I love that the videos are here and that we're doing this, and I hope everyone can benefit from it. When do you think you'll be able to go back out into the schools? Gotta ask.
Well, that's a question that's probably not in our hands. So there's a few factors. Of course, when schools allow visitors back again, and then B, there's always this funding question. So we'll put that out.
That's where I was going.
Because so the way the program works, and I encourage everybody also to look on the website, is usually the Musicians Union is very supportive. They fund usually 50% of a show. Sometimes they'll give out 100% for a few, and then it's additional 50%. So any funds that we can have, we can actually match them up and go to as many schools as possible. And of course, being there live in person in front of the kids and seeing the bass guitar and the keyboard, it's a different dimension. So of course, these are wonderful resources and I want them to be used anywhere. But having the music in the classroom and up close and personal, and you get up and you dance to it, that's a third and a fourth dimension that we need as human beings. So thanks, Lisa, for getting me into the funding aspect too. So big thank you to B-Town Jazz for being the host of all of this. We've done this since 2006, so 15 years of going into the schools. And huge thanks to the Smithville Foundation for providing the funds, for putting the resources together. Spread the word. Be careful out there. Thank you to Maggie and Lisa. Thank you also to Lisa Ensman at B-Town Jazz for programming everything, and Chris Parker, who is our drummer, our videographer, our editor, and the vice president of B-Town Jazz. Also, thank you to Melody Leon, who was our helper and supporter out from California, who just finished her master's out there and helped us organize everything. So good luck to all of us, right? And let's spread the word.